So welcome back to Learning Partner. As I have started a series where I'm explaining all the interview questions focusing on particular topics. So in the last video, you might have seen like I have explained all the questions from components, like what are the possible or various questions we may get asked in an interview. So that all the questions I have covered in the last episode. Now in this episode, we are going to focus on the directives, like what are the possible questions or various ways interviewer will ask you like what are the directives, different types, custom directives, all those questions we are going to focus. So now just starting with like what is directive. So just like a component, so it's kind of a tricky definition, but at least we can say something like directives add behavior to an existing DOM element or the existing component instance. Okay, so what is the purpose of directive? With the help of directive, we can add additional behavior to an existing element. By using directive, we can add some behavior to existing DOM element. Means there are like you already know like ngif, ng for, ng style, ng class are there. What is the purpose? They do some functionality or they do some modification or manipulation to the element. Correct? So that is the definition of directive. Directives add behavior to existing DOM element or the component as well. Now, unlike component, multiple directives can be added to a single DOM elements. Okay, so let's say you have a text box. So on that text box, you can add a directive or ng model. Like that, you can add another directive. Let's say you just want to allow number only, so you can add that directive. Let's say you have created a directive which performs some validations, you can add that also. So multiple directives we can add on a particular element. Now, one more question normally interview will ask you just to confuse you, like what are the lifecycle events of the directive? As you know, like component is also a kind of a directive. So what are the lifecycle hooks we have seen in the component? Those are present with directives also, right? Now we know like ng for, ngif, ng class, ng switch, ng style are the directives. Apart from that, router outlet is a directive, router link is also a directive, view child is also a directive, ng model is also a directive, ng switch also a directive, right? So these are some default directives we are having. Okay. Now, next question, types of directives. So basically there are four types of directives. Someone will say there are just two directives, structural and attribute. Someone will say three directives, structural, attribute, and custom. Someone will say component is also a kind of a directive. So broadly, we have four directives. Okay. Now, structural directive. In the name itself, it is given like structure. Directives which can change the structure of the DOM means ngif and ngfor, which are these are the directive which can add or new, which can create a new element or remove an existing element. Means it can change the structure of the DOM. Correct? Then attribute directive. Attribute in the name itself again. It has this responsibility to add extra behavior to the existing element. Means these directives cannot create new element or remove element, but it can add some extra behavior, extra attributes to a directive. So we have ng class and ng style. In structural, we have ng switch also, but that I didn't listed it over there. Again, component. Component is also a directive, but with a template. Custom directive, you can create your own directives also. So that is the last category we have, that is custom directive. Now command to create like ng generate directive and directive name. Now, what is structural directive? I have already seen the definition, like directives which are responsible to add or remove the DOM elements are called as a structural directive. Again, inside the structural directive, we have ng if and ng for. Now ng, the sole purpose of ng is when we use ng, if it got true value, it will create this element. Otherwise, it will remove this element from the DOM. It doesn't hide and show. For our understanding, we say like it just hide and show, but no. If you inspect and see what it actually does is like when we use the ngif, it will actually remove the element from the DOM. And when that condition get true, means ngif has got the true value, it will create that element again. Correct? Same like that ng for. So ng for is used as a for loop to iterate particular element, to create dynamic element based on the array. So you can see here we have created city list, which is array of the string, and we are using paragraph to iterate whatever the records we have in the city list. Right? So this is ng for. Then coming back to attribute directive. So attribute directive, we have said like attribute directives are responsible to add extra behavior to an existing element. Correct? Means it cannot add or create. It means we cannot create new element or it cannot remove the existing element also. So examples are ng class and ng style. With ng class, we can add a dynamic class. With ng style, we can add a dynamic CSS. So there are n number of possible ways by which we can use ng style. So see, you can create a variable, and in that variable you can create an object which will have some key value pair data, but it will look like a CSS property. See, color, red, width, something value. Then this variable we can use it to add anywhere like this ng style, and you can pass the variable name. Let's say you need to add a custom CSS. So you can use ng style, and in the HTML you will create an object like this, key value pair data you will add, and here you can pass the variable name also over here like this. Then ng class. So ng class again same like that. Let's say you have a variable, and in that variable you have some class, and you need to add this class to any element. So you can use ng class and provide the variable name. Whatever the value you have in this variable, that will be added as a class to this element. Another way is by using conditional operating. Means, let's say we have created two variables, num1 and num2. So if num1 and num2 are same, we will add this class, otherwise this class. This is conditional based class. Another way is, so this way is used when we have to add two classes. Either this condition get true this class or else this class. But what if we have to add multiple classes based on multiple conditions? So here you can use this scenario. In ng class, you can add a curly bracket, and inside that curly bracket, first will be the class name and the condition. Comma separated. Class 2, what is the condition? Class 3, again third condition. Like that, you can add multiple classes based on multiple condition. This is ng class. Let's move to next question. Now again, just this is not the normal way like interview will ask you. If you are an experienced developer, then you should know all the possible ways by which we can use ng if ng for. See, first way is by using variable. So we create a variable and we use that variable on the ng. Second is we can directly pass the reference. This is not the actual case because what ng require? Ng requires Boolean value. Doesn't matter it get that value from a variable or directly or from a comparison also. So here you can see I have set the comparison like this. So if this variable, if this comparison output is true, then this particular span will be visible, otherwise it will be hidden. Fourth way is we can pass a function to ngif also. See, this function is returning some variable value. It should be true or false, and that we are using it over here. So ngif doesn't matter from where it is getting the true and false value. ngif requires true and false value. If it got true, the element will be rendered, otherwise it will be removed. So either you can pass it from a variable or from a comparison, or directly you can pass a function also, which is returning some true false value. Same like that ng for also you can do. You can either pass an array. Comparison, obviously we cannot do that, but you can pass a function also which is returning some array. Correct? Now, difference between structure and attribute. We have already seen like it structural. Just to make it a proper question, I have added it, but we have already seen it. Structure, it can change the structure. Attribute, it will just add a extra behavior to existing element. Now, how do we create a custom directive? So simple, by using Angular CLI command ng generate directive, and whatever the directive name you have to give. This is the way how we create the directive. So here you can see I have just provided an example. Now one again thing is there. Whenever interview will start asking questions on the directive, obviously he's going to ask, have you created any custom directive? So always, it doesn't matter if you are a fresher or an experienced, try to create an example which is actual and have a practical use. Don't say this highlight directive. This I have created, right? So this is just for a theoretical understanding, but don't say highlight. Okay, that highlight directive doesn't make any sense because same thing we can get, same functionality we can get by CSS also. So why do we have to create the directive, correct? So always try to create a use case directive. I have listed some of them. You can either try to implement the same, or if in your project there is a certain requirement where you can create a directive, always go ahead and create a directive so that that example you can explain in the interview. No one wants to listen the highlight directive. They want to see if you really have created any useful directive. Okay, so just for the example, I have showcased like I can create a tooltip also. So here you can see by using some things, we have created a tooltip. Now, like you can see element ref is there, renderer is there. So in coming question, we are going to see what is this. Now, a renderer 2. So previously we had renderer, but I think 14 or 15 version we got it got removed and we got renderer 2 now. So renderer 2 is a service. Okay. So when we used to work with JavaScript, we used to get the reference of the particular DOM element by document.getElement, correct? And we used to add a dynamic style, or by using document.createElement, we used to create new element also. So whatever we used to do by using those DOM APIs, same thing we can do by creating an object of renderer. Okay, so renderer 2 is a service which provide methods like create element, create text, append child, add class, right? Whatever the things we used to do with DOM element, correct? Let's move to next question. So here you can see I have used the renderer and we can append a child, remove a child, like these things. Next. What are host listener and host binding? You might have heard about host listener, but host binding is also there. Now check the difference. Host binding and host listener both are the two decorators. Now, when we come to the decorator, again I will discuss. These decorators are method decorator, which we add it above the method name, right? So host binding let you set the properties of the element on the component that hosts the directive. Means whatever the element you add that directive now, just like document.get element by id and whatever things you used to do, that same thing you can do by host binding. See, host binding style.color, host binding binder border.color. So you can add the css like this. And host listener, right? So host listener is just a what do we say, way to capture the event, correct? So host binding lets you set the properties of the element, so you don't need to use renderer or the element ref. You can use host binding also, and host listener lets you listen for the event. That is what you should know, correct? Default directives we have in Angular: ng if, ng power, ng model, ng class, ng style, ng switch, ng template outlet, ng container, ng content, ng non-bindable. This is a new you might have heard. Router outlet, router link. These are the directive which we have in Angular by default. Now, when it comes to ng for now, someone will ask you a question. This question will be mostly asked for the experienced developer, not for the fresher. Like, what is the use of track by? Okay, so track by is a kind of a property or a function we use in ng-for. So here you can see, let me just first explain you what is the theory. Track by option in ng-for allows you to specify a function that Angular use to track the items by unique identifier instead of relying on the object reference identity. Simple meaning is, let's say we have an array of some items. Here ID is something unique. Okay, so let's say you are working on a table and inside that you have done the inline editing, and let's say first row or the second row you have done some changes in any field. If you are not using track by, so what it will does, whenever you make some changes in any object from any array, it will re-render the whole for loop again. But if you are using the track by, okay, so whatever the object you say made changes, now only that particular tr will get re-render. So that is the purpose of track by. It will see here somewhere. This identifier help you keep the track which item had been changed, means which object has changed, that only it will re-render or has been removed from the data changes. It improves the performance, especially when dealing with the large list by adding an unnecessary re-rendering. So when we use the track by, we have to provide that what is the unique key that ng-for should look for the changes. So this is the implementation which you can see. If you know the React, in React also we have the same thing by key. We can provide a key over there, but in Angular we have track by, correct? So let's move to next question. Now this is kind of it is not non-bindable. This thing is like, you normally don't use this directive, but just for the interview purpose, you just need to remember it. So remember, consider you want to print, let's say we have created this variable, and in that variable in h1 I have printed this. Now if I run this here, I will be getting the value of Angular. because here I have simply used the interpolation, and whatever the value this variable hold, it will print it. But now for the ng, for this h1, if I add this directive, so output will be like this. It won't evaluate the value. It will print as it is. So the Angular execution won't be triggering. Means it will consider that as a static HTML. Doesn't matter you have written as an interpolation or not, it won't evaluate. So consider like you are creating a tutorial kind of application just like mine. So if you try to print the same thing like this now, it will throw the error. In Angular, we cannot print something like this, correct? So in that scenario, you can use this directive, which will avoid the interpretation. Okay, let's move. Now, what is the use of element ref? So element ref, again, same thing. Renderer and the element ref both serves the same purpose, to get the reference of the element on which you apply the directive. And whatever the things you used to do with DOM API, that you can do it over here. So it's a class. Now, it's a class, and renderer 2 was a service. Okay, I have a question over again. It's a class provided by Angular framework that represent a reference to an element in the DOM, means document object model. It is often used within the component to access or manipulate the DOM directly. We can use element ref in the component or the directives also, just like just an alternative to view child, correct? So we mostly use element ref in the custom directive when we have to get the reference of that element where we add the directive, correct? Then difference between renderer to an element ref. So as I said, like element ref is a class. Okay. Now that will provide an access to the native element, the DOM element. But renderer 2 is a service. Okay. So it's a wrapper around the whatever the things we get in the element ref. Now in render 2, we have got some another method which are not the, which in element ref, we have so many methods, but in render 2, we have limited number of methods that you can use. But as per Angular team, they say like always, whenever possible, try to use the renderer too for DOM manipulation and directive. Okay, just for the compatibility and maintainability of the Angular application, because in some further application, they might get rid of the element reference, because element ref is directly communicating by using the DOM API, right? So as Angular suggests, never use DOM APIs directly. So they have created an alternative renderer too. So they are asking us to use the renderer too, because in future version, they might remove the element ref. So if you try to upgrade your project to the newer version, you might face the issue. So that's why they said use the renderer to wherever it is possible. Now some custom example. As I said, like whenever you explain the directives, like have you create when obviously any interviewer is going to ask you, like have you created any custom directive? You always should have an example ready so that you can explain. Yes, I have created a custom directive and a scenario was this, and I have created directive was like that. So let's say I have to create a directive which will allow only numbers. So here at the top, you can see, wait, this is the local project, same local project I have run. So this is the text box you can see. Now, if you can see, I'm typing some numbers, characters, I'm not able to print anything. But if I type number, it is typing. So let me just show you the directive. So this is the directive. So here, what you can say, I have changed, I have listened to the input change event. See, okay, on input changes, what I'm whatever the value I'm getting, I'm comparing that with is it a number or not with regular expression. Okay, so if it is not, then I'm stopping the event propagation. Let me just comment it out. And now if I try to print the very something, say it is not printing. Okay, but number is, it is there. Got it? So this is the directive which allows user to enter only number. Correct? So this is one of that. The last one. Okay. This is kind of a very advanced, but just a normal way. So as you can see, this is the application which I'm using, right? So let me just show you. Let's open it. Now I want to, what do we say? I want to protect my data, like whatever the data you see in my in component, I have shown you like how we can restrict copy and paste, right? So just like that, let's copy and let's try to paste. I'm not able to copy paste. See, I'm trying to select it, Control C, Control C. but still I'm not able to copy paste because that's why I have disabled that. But let's say some developer will try to inspect it and then they will it. They can get the content from here, inspect, right? But what I have did is once you open the inspect, now I'm removing every HTML. So there is no way you can copy my answers and the question. So how I have done that? See, this is another directive, check for dev mode. So resize event I have checked. So once we resize, because once we open the console, it's actually resizing the window na. So on that I have written the event. So here I'm simply checking the width and the height. If width and the height is same, I'm making the HTML empty. And if it is, if again you close it, I'm just making the windows reload. So just let me show you. So let's say Angular I have selected. So you can see the question, but once I open the inspect, you can see I have shown the pop-up, you have opened the developer tools and I'm removing everything. So you cannot copy the code I have or the questions I have. Like just a example I wanted to show you. But if you close it again I'm saying showing the message like thanks for closing and page get reload. And again, you can see the questions. So just like that, have some proper example created for you that you will use it to explain in the interview. Okay. So these are the all possible directives question what I had in my library, right? So if you have some question of your own, please send it to me on LinkedIn. Soon I will be creating one form over here. With that, you can provide your question. If and answer also, if you know the answer also, you can provide that. I will check it and I will make it live on this application. So you can use this application not just for this time, in the next interview also you will have always your questions available in this application. So that's it. If you are new over here, please do like and subscribe.